Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on what part of the world you are in. Today we're going to talk to you about youth culture, identities, values, and apps. A presentation compiled by Rich, Paula, and Nick. Through this presentation, we focused on 3 required readings, as well found additional readings that correlated with the findings in these readings, as well as the interest of our topic. The first reading is titled Personal Identity in the Age of the App. The second article, Your Best Friend or Worst Enemy, The Significance of Youth Popular Culture and Education. And the third article, Peer Acceptance and Social Behavior During Childhood and Adolescence. How important are appearance, athleticism, and academic competence? We would ask that you respond to one of 3 of our critical questions. The first question is theoretical, the second one practical, and the third personal or reflective. The first question, from the research and interviews presented in Personal Identity in the Age of the App, do you think that Erikson's psychosocial development theory is still applicable or accurate based on the influence that social media and apps have on youth? Provide personal examples or evidence from the provided reading. Question 2. If teachers do try to make youth and popular culture an integral part of their classrooms, how do they do this effectively among a diverse group of students? How do they know what is culturally relevant and what is not? And how do they speak to all students and not just some? Share any experiences you've had as a teacher in this area. Question 3. Athleticism, aggressive disruptive behavior, sensitive isolated behavior, academics, and attractiveness are arguably all traits that are defined in their relativity to others. How has schooling shaped your self-concept of self-efficacy? How could schooling be positive, detrimental, or both to a subject's sense of self? Share your experiences. Article 1. Personal Identity in the Age of the App. This article focused on how identity and other variables such as self-esteem and acceptance are influenced by popular apps and the use of technology. This article did not have a research study in regards to quantitative methods, but examined different pieces of literature and provided verbal responses from different youth in regards to the views on apps. Media and celebrities influence youth through social media and other forms of technology. Although technology has provided society with many new opportunities, such as connecting with one another, however, there are also many drawbacks. Some points to consider is, how is a youth's identity shaped by apps? Apps allow you to alter your image, such as Instagram, Photoshop, or Snapchat. Ask yourself, is the self you portray on your media the same as how you portray yourself at home, work, or with friends? What about your kids or your students? Some more key points from this article. The risks of apps and social media equals minimized focus on inner life. Youth have difficulty finding their own self-identity because their identity is determined by the likes and comments on their apps. Do we focus more on socially desirable online selves? A quote from this article, people are more concerned with making it look like they are living than actually living. Most participants interviewed expressed in person they are shyer and more soft-spoken. However, online they present themselves as extroverted. One positive from this article identified as presenting yourself as someone else through World of Warcraft. Through different online platforms such as World of Warcraft, you can present yourself in a different manner that you might prefer to be presented as, whereas you can't in real life. In this article is identified that a narcissistic personality inventory test showed that 19% of college students in the 1980s scored high and 30%, 11% more from the previous research, of students in the 2000s scored as high through the respective research mentioned in this article. This point shows that with the enhancements in technology, there has been an increase of narcissism in different people. Volunteerism. Volunteerism has increased in young people. However, could this be linked to leveraging personal perception? A point to ponder. Would you volunteer or complete a task if no one acknowledged it? Article 1 Connections. The first connection that was made was the connectivism theory. As we are doing this course, we are connecting with each other regardless of where we are in the world. The connectivism theory by Siemens and Down has different principles such as Learning and knowledge rests in diversity of opinions. Learning is a process of connecting. Learning may reside in non-human appliances, and more. The concept of this theory is that technology has provided great opportunities for us. However, do these opportunities come with the risk of losing our sense of self? Connectivism can promote PBL, problem-based learning, in the school, but how does connectivism and technology affect youth? Are we sacrificing anything when utilizing technology? The second theory to consider is Erikson's theory of psychosocial stage. This theory consists of 8 different stages. One stage that connects to this article is stage 5, identity versus role confusion, what occurs from age 12 to 18. During this time, youth are very vulnerable to their identity, and with social media and apps, is their identity being flawed through the different media they consume? How does tech and media affect identity and role confusion? Are we too vulnerable at the age of 12 to 18 that media and apps will alter our social self? During this age, adolescents search for a sense of self and personal identity through an intense exploration of personal values, beliefs, and goals. So, is tech the reason we see an increase in mental health and identity problems, or does tech just make these issues accelerated? Mental health. How has mental health been impacted by social media? In the below study by Freeman, Ferguson, and Nagy, Social Media Use and Mental Health Among Young Adults, it was found that how individuals use social media is more critical than the time spent online in regards to mental health. Often, teachers and regular humans associate mental health with the use of apps. But is this true? Another quote from this article: why the popular press, suicide advocates, and policymakers, such as board members, continue to hone in on time spent online as a cause of mental health problems is an interesting question, particularly given lack of clear evidence for this relationship. Through this study and the literature review in this article, it was shown that mental health and social media does not have a strong correlation. Another point to consider from this article, among other issues identified in this paper, perceived parent and child conflict appears to be one of the stronger predictors of many mental health issues. Personal experience as a student and personal experience as a teacher. As a student, I seen Facebook blow up and my life start to be displayed online. This definitely changed how I portrayed myself in person and online. As a teacher, I have seen that tech has severely increased bullying in regards to cyberbullying with the use of Facebook. Here's an image that illustrates connectivism, showing that different apps connect different people. This is an illustration of the stages of psychosocial development. Additional points from this article. Youth are more likely to recognize celebrities than political leaders. This point shows the relevance of social media and media in general in youth's lives. Technology has improved or allowed for a globalized world. Lack of self-knowledge leads to insecurity as youth focus on internet. Role models are found on MTV rather than family or neighborhood. TV stars embody glamour and self-centered lifestyles. Youth are quantifiable objects. There are apps that create an index score for you based on likes and comments. However, on the other end of the spectrum, social media has enhanced the spiritual lives of youth. Today's youth adopt or rejoice trends that were scorned previously. And social media and technology allows you to see the world, but know you are poor or underprivileged. There is a constant exposure to privilege, which may alter your self-identity or self-confidence. The additional reading that I felt connected to the original reading is Social Media, Exploring the Relationship of Social Networking Sites on Body Image, Self-Esteem, and Eating Disorders. This article focused on a study with 161 participants at the University of Windsor in a first-year class. They found that comments and likes influence a person's acceptance and perception. As well, comments and likes drive the type of media or pictures posted, whereas if someone likes a picture of you playing hockey, you might post more pictures of you playing hockey. Social network sites correlate with an increase in negative and unhealthy behaviors in regards to body image. Additionally, problematic social network sites may lower body image and self-esteem and increase eating disorders. The relevance of this article is that this article focused on the influence that social media and technology has on youth.
Jeffrey Duncan Andrade's article examines the significance of incorporating youth popular culture into a classroom setting. He argues that inclusive classrooms are primarily concerned with inclusiveness from a racial perspective, and that this doesn't go nearly far enough. He believes there's much to be gained by including youth culture that students care about. In this view, youth and popular culture can serve as a bridge that connects teachers, students, the world outside, and the curriculum. Duncan Andrade believes youth culture should be a core component within education rather than a nice-to-have extra feature. He also speaks to Grossberg's teaching model known as articulation and risk, whereby learning is anchored in modern culture. While this doesn't mean that classical texts, ideas, or theories are irrelevant, but rather they can be bridged to through more contemporary youth and popular culture. Some of the key takeaways from the article are that many students feel that school not only ignores their interests, but actually may work in opposition to their interests. Therefore, if done well, culturally relevant teaching may be part of the antidote to this. This model also sees students as active creators of meaningful learning content, since modern culture artifacts allow almost any individual to create, publish content through online technology, social media, and mobile apps. It is worth asking if culturally relevant teaching suggests that the only things inherently interesting to students are the only things worth learning about. Most educators would likely disagree, so it's an open question as to how do they manage cultural relevance with both curriculum and vital subject concepts and ideas. Lastly, what do teachers who don't authentically share their students' cultural interests do about this? Effective teaching and learning involves trust. This is difficult to create and maintain if one doesn't act in a way that's true to oneself. Students will have little trouble spotting phoniness from their teachers. This article calls to mind a couple of other theories. If we take Duncan Andrade seriously and embed popular culture into our learning environments, we need to ask what effects do modern technologies that come along with popular culture, which primarily are social media and mobile apps, what effects do these technologies have on learning? We think about the nature of these tools. They're generally designed for short, quick, public messaging, and education often demands different things of our students. We often ask for deep thinking, reflection, long text, and debate. It's worth asking if today's pop culture media are really well suited for these tasks. The article also connects to the applied behavior analysis theory of currency. And currency really is suggesting that student motivation and engagement can be stimulated by educators if teachers can identify and leverage something that's meaningful to students. Duncan Andrade's point here is that youth and popular culture is by and large a hugely important currency to most students, and it's one that educators would be foolish to ignore. Some additional readings on this subject. The Erikson and Laughter study is really an aggregate of a whole bunch of other studies on the significance and impact of culturally relevant teaching. Their ultimate conclusion is that, and I quote, culturally relevant education is our best hope to solving socio-cultural issues. One other reading worth noting is Rhetta Hammonds' book, Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain. Hammond is noted not only as an expert in the area of culturally responsive teaching, but she has an interesting twist in that she actually studies the neurological effect of this teaching and learning practice. And she's demonstrated how culturally relevant teaching actually literally alters our students' brains.
So Article 3 is called Peer Acceptance and Social Behavior During Childhood and Adolescence. How important are appearance, athleticism, and academic competence? The Rhetta et al. Study used a large sample size of 3,183 students between grades 2 and 10 at 198 different schools. The methodology used was a revised class play or RCP method, which involves an interplay between peer treatment and child behavior. An RCP is often used to determine children's social competence in peer relations. In this study, students in a class were asked to match classmates to 15 positive attributes and 15 negative attributes. Following the RCP assessment, 4 subscales were evaluated. The first was leadership popularity, or for example, a person with good ideas for things to do. The second was pro-social behavior, someone who helps others when they need it. The third was aggressive, disruptive behavior, a person who loses their temper easily. And finally, sensitive, isolated behavior, someone whose feelings get easily hurt. Then, a 5-point Likert scale was used alongside the name of each classroom peer in order to determine a reliable and stable measure of classroom acceptance. Correlations were found between appearance, athleticism, and academic competence, accounting for unique proportions of variance in the social acceptance ratings received from peers. Association of child attributes and patterns of behavioral interaction are as follows. With leadership popularity, it was most associated with children perceived as attractive, even as young as preschool, and children, especially elementary school boys, perceived as athletic. Academic competence was most highly associated among elementary school children. Then, pro-social behavior was most associated with peer perceptions of lower athletic ability and lower perceived attractiveness, especially among females. Aggressive disruptive behavior was associated with boys in general, more so than girls, and primarily perceived with higher levels of athleticism and lower levels of appearance and academic competence. Sensitive isolated behavior was associated with negative peer perceptions of attractiveness and athleticism. Peer perceptions of attractiveness and athleticism continued to demonstrate significant and unique associations with peer acceptance, whereas academic competence, on the other hand, did not do so consistently. So in connecting the Rhetta et al. Article, this study raises questions about sociocultural context, leading me to wonder the following 3 questions. The first, are students' results due to individuals' positive attributions to attractiveness or due to a halo effect? Halo effect meaning the tendency to attribute all positive attributes to the same individuals. This study also makes me question whether or not the students perceived as athletic or attractive or academically competent really are how they are perceived by their peers. So for example, if perceived athleticism is relative, wouldn't things change if an athletic boy from a small school were to go to a larger school of athletic boys? Or would that boy have developed the traits for social acceptance from his previous school? Different child attributes may be valued or responded to differently in urban versus suburban versus rural settings, therefore indicating that a student's social situation may be determined by social factors. This article also reminded me of the interplay between self-fulfilling prophecy and people's sense of self. So self-fulfilling prophecy can be defined as any positive or negative expectation about circumstances that may affect a person's behavior toward them. An example of this could be that if a student is believed to be good at math, either by parents or a teacher, this student will likely try harder in math. On the contrary, if a student lacks a confidence in math, and either their parent or teacher portrays this student will likely give up on math when struggling. So in both of these situations, they would be fulfilling the prophecy that has been set out for them in terms of math skills. This article also reminded me of the interplay between self-efficacy, self-concept, and self-esteem, as outlined by the diagram to your right. Self-efficacy is the belief that one is able to execute behavior or perform a task successfully. Self-concept is the belief, attitude, and opinion that each person holds to be true about their personal existence. So their physical, academic, and social components, which are the same criteria discussed in the Venata et al. Article. Finally, self-esteem is made up of 5 components, including sense of security, identity, belonging, purpose, and personal competence. And studies have shown by Bong and Ramani that self-esteem, goal orientation, and academic achievement are correlated. So with students' sense of self being shaped by the environment that they're in and the interactions that they're having with peers and teachers, this begs the question of what should we be doing as teachers to be contributing to positive senses of self for students and therefore contributing positively to their academic achievement. If you would like to do some additional reading or more research on the sources that I have mentioned, these are the references. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and we look forward to discussing this further with you.